Welcome to Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame mode fandom. My name is Wilder Adams, and this is the first time that this show has ever gone live, and I think it's perfect timing because the Minnesota Timberwolves, they make a move at this deadline. The Minnesota Timberwolves acquire Ayo Dosunmu from the Chicago Bulls, and in the full deal, Minnesota sends out Rob Dillingham, Leonard Miller, and 4 second-round picks for Ayo Dosunmu and Julian Phillips. There's a wide range of trades that we are all, I think, awaiting at this deadline because Minnesota has been probably in every rumor that you can imagine, from as big as Giannis to as small as Jose Alvarado. And we end up somewhere in the middle. They end up with Ayo Dosunmu. In this episode, we're just going to react to what happened with the Timberwolves getting Ayo Dosunmu, what this could mean, kind of just reflecting on Rob, Leonard Miller, but then also we could talk about what Ayo Dosunmu will bring to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Make sure to subscribe to Wilder Wolves. Thank you all so much for the growth throughout this channel, especially the last couple of days. We just surpassed 2,100 followers on YouTube. Big honor. And we're going to continue covering the Timberwolves, and this deadline will be live and talking about this deal. And if the Timberwolves make another deal, expect us to go live again because today is fully dedicated to you guys, the fans of the Timberwolves, and this trade deadline. So let's get right into it and talk about Ayo Dosunmu and the Minnesota Timberwolves. So Ayo Dosunmu is super exciting. Okay, that's my first thought right away. Dosunmu is having a career year in Chicago, is averaging 15 points a game, 64 true shooting. We talk about Jaden McDaniels' efficiency. Now we could talk about Ayo Dosunmu's efficiency. I'm talking 15 points, 45% from three, over 50% from the field. Age 26 on the final year of a 3-year contract worth around $21 million. So Ayo Dosunmu is going to be a free agent this summer. But a big part of this acquisition from Minnesota is that they now have bird rights over Ayo Dosunmu, so they can go over the cap to sign him this summer, which gives Minnesota kind of a pre-free agency advantage when it comes to Dosunmu. So that's one, super exciting. And I think when you think about the assets they traded, I know the Timberwolves fan base maybe grew a little concerned about what happened with Rob Dillingham in Minnesota at the end, but they send out the 8th overall pick in 2024. They send out 4 second-round picks. That is not nothing. 4 second-round picks. That's a purchase. That's a transaction right there to get somebody who I'm assuming Minnesota views as a long-term part of their future, somebody that they'll probably end up looking to re-sign with how much they gave up for him. So that's number one. And Ayo Dosunmu is somebody who I absolutely love. He is somebody who is, one, having a career year, but he is, when you think about losing Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think when you look at the options, this trade deadline, he was the one player who was the most similar to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who Minnesota could have acquired. Not a direct comparison. I wouldn't say he's the same level of defender as Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but he plays really hard. He's got good size. He's 6'6", not super great wingspan, but I think enough length. He plays really hard. He has 120 defensive rating in Chicago, but I think he's a better defender than what the analytics would say. I mean, Chicago can't defend a traffic cone. That's just the truth. So I think that this is a very interesting deal. I think you put him in Minnesota, assuming there's not a bigger deal happening. We'll get into if there's still a bigger deal on the way or not. Spoiler, I don't think there is, but it's not impossible. But you pair Ayo Dosunmu with Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels. I think we'll see his defensive impact go up because there'll be a lot less pressure on him. Not an Nickeil level defender, but I would say he is ahead offensively with the Minnesota Timberwolves in this circumstance relative to what Nickeil dealt with because he's averaging 20 in Atlanta right now. Dosunmu, he's a 45% three-point shooter. I think that's what you look at first, but even we'll see if that jumper maintains to that level because Ayo Dosunmu I wouldn't label as a consistent elite shooter despite the analytics. Maybe this is just who he is going forward, and if that is the truth, great. But historically throughout his career, sort of like Jaden in a way, his shooting efficiency is kind of up and down from three, but what he is, if he's not an elite shooter, and I do think he can shoot, he is a high-level, just connective tissue piece on a really good team. He can really drive to the rim. He's got really good craftiness. I would label him a below the rim level finisher. So he can get to the rim. He has some creativity there. He's a good connective playmaker. He can shoot the ball pretty well. He's just somebody who's going to add some size. He is somebody who adds youth. And he's also somebody who can just, I think, just play in a good team. Like, I think Ayo Dosunmu on a good team, his impact is going to go way more noticed. This isn't a, Colin Sexton situation where you put up big numbers on a mediocre to bad team and then you send him somewhere else and then his impact isn't the same. I think Ayo Dosunmu is a really good piece. I think this is really good value for Minnesota, landing somebody of this caliber for the price they did. Now, it's an investment. It's 4 second-round picks. That is not nothing for a team that's already short on draft assets. So we'll see, but I really love this acquisition from Minnesota. They also get Julian Phillips, who I don't foresee playing much. He's somebody who I would label a high-level athlete. Not a ton more other than that at this point of his career. Didn't play at all for Chicago. I think Minnesota, they wanted to do a 2-for-2 in this deal. Now, for what reason, I'm not sure. We'll see. We know this for sure, though. Minnesota is below the 14-player roster requirement. I believe Minnesota can only go 2 weeks while having around 24 or 14 players. So I'm assuming either there's another deal coming or they'll go into that buyout market and then sign somebody else. Now, who is that player? Do they get Mike Conley back? Because now they're technically able to bring Mike back if he gets bought out by Charlotte. There's other options as well. There is rumors that DeMar DeRozan might be bought out. And if DeMar DeRozan gets bought out, why wouldn't you call and see if you can land him if you're Minnesota? Because DeMar DeRozan, this team, while I think Ayo Dosunmu adds a big piece, just having guard depth on the team that's really desperate for it, I still think this team could use some more wing scoring off the bench. So if they can get a DeMar DeRozan as well in the buyout market, I think that's a win. And like I said, is there another trade happening? We'll see. I would say never. If, on this live, somebody makes a big trade that I'm not aware of, I would super appreciate if somebody comments if I somehow miss it. But Minnesota still has more moves to make, whether they sign somebody, whether they trade for somebody. Does this fully take them out of the Giannis conversation? If I had to guess, I would say probably. There's kind of mixed signals there because Jake Fisher says that Minnesota still has confidence in the idea of landing a Giannis Antetokounmpo. However, it's not looking like Milwaukee's looking to deal him at the deadline. Even Jake Fisher said that. And then Brian Windhorst also said that he doesn't think that this is a signal that Minnesota is actively pursuing Giannis anymore. So we'll see if this is the exclusive trade they make this deadline. If they do make another trade after this live, I'll go live again. So let's stay tuned for that. But definitely, I think Ayo Dosunmu is a great acquisition. The size, the youth, I think that the signals they're going to try to keep him long-term. They have free agency rights over him. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, thank you all 39 people so far on the live. If you have any comments, would super love to appreciate and engage with all of you. Thank you all so much for hopping on this live. Anyway, Ayo Dosunmu, great acquisition, great fit. And then I also want to cover, before we go more into Ayo Dosunmu and what that could look like within the rotation, let's talk about the players who we sent out. Rob Dillingham is now a Chicago Bull. And I think if we all kind of looked back and saw the way things were ending, especially with the Toronto game, Mike Conley's not on the team anymore, and Rob Dillingham still doesn't get burned. I think we all anticipated this happening, Rob Dillingham going. And Rob Dillingham, man, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, 8th overall pick, you trade 2 first-round picks for him. It sounded like the Milwaukee Bucks, they kind of wanted, perhaps a Jaden McDaniels package, multiple picks package. If they don't trade for Rob Dillingham, maybe Minnesota's chances goes up to land Giannis, even though I don't want to trade Jaden McDaniels, don't get me wrong. So we'll see what happens. And we got one comment, Mike is coming back, and this makes it really possible. I haven't seen if there's any update on what's happening in Charlotte, Maybe that's something we'll get in the coming days if we don't get an update right now. But that's going to be something to stay tuned for. So, yeah, I think there's definitely a good chance Minnesota is active in the buyout market now because they have to. They have to get somebody else on this roster because there's 13 players on the team right now. But back to the Rob Dillingham thing, it's really unfortunate with how this ended up in Minnesota because when they drafted Rob Dillingham, my first thought was Minnesota's the perfect situation for him, right? A young, talented guard who gets to learn in a winning situation behind Mike Conley, learn the leadership and intangibles and the true point guard role that a Mike Conley provides you. That's just not what happened. It's not what happened. Instead, he wasn't consistently in the rotation. The offense throughout the first 18 months in Minnesota, the confidence drained to the point where he lost faith in a jumper that was 45% from three in college. It's disappointing. And we know if Rob Dillingham at his size, if he's not shooting at a high level, I don't really care how good of a defender he is for his size. That's going to make him a net negative player. You have to be a really good offensive player at that size because he also has the neutral wingspan. He also has the small hands. So Rob Dillingham, that reality in Minnesota was really disappointing considering what they gave up for him. Now we can go back and look back and say, was this more a Chris Finch thing? Is it a player development thing? Or is it just that Rob Dillingham is not a great fit? So I think there's a lot of possibilities with what's happening here, but maybe we'll know more as time goes on and we know more about, because you guys know this, after trades, usually stories come out. So we'll see. I mean, from the beginning, there was disconnect on Rob Dillingham's role. We know that is a fact. I mean, John Case talked about that. So I don't know. It's really disappointing because I think Minnesota, the vision was getting another creator with high upside next to Anthony Edwards, a team that lacked ball handling, a team that lacked, playmaking in general. If Rob Dillingham developed to the upside that Minnesota thought he had, that some of the league thought he had, I mean, there were Darius Garland, there were Kemba Walker comps coming into the league. If that came into fruition, I think Minnesota is in a great position, not short term, but long term. And Minnesota right now is still in a good long term position, but losing out on Rob Dillingham, losing out on the draft flexibility because they missed on the Rob Dillingham pick, that's unfortunate. But hey, shout out to Tim Connolly. You get Rob Dillingham, you package him, and you don't go completely empty. You send him to Chicago, where he's playing behind a lot of guards right now. So we'll see what that turns into, because I know Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu are gone, but they also have, they still have Anthony Simons there. We'll see if he's here at the deadline. They also still have Josh Giddey. They still have some players on that squad that he's going to play behind, no doubt. So I guess we'll see how it looks in Chicago for Rob Dillingham. But shout out to Minnesota. They whiffed on the Rob Dillingham pick, but they still end up favorably. They land Ayo Dosunmu, who's a great long-term fit. And you guys on YouTube, if you guys want to comment your thoughts on the Ayo Dosunmu acquisition, that'd be awesome. I got some interaction on Twitter, people talking about the Ayo Dosunmu acquisition. So let's go into some of those comments as well. I think Minnesota fans are very happy. I mean, Tyler Ireland goes fantastic, perfect. Wolves replace Nah, extend a 26-year-old potentially, still under the second apron. He's also young enough to be of interest in Milwaukee. Minnesota, at the bare minimum this deadline, they save a lot. They save a lot because the Mike Conley trade, they get off $10 million. They trade Rob Dillingham and Leonard Miller, which is about, I think it's around $8.7 million combined. They bring in Ayo Dosunmu and Julian Phillips. So I do believe they're still under the first apron. So this is, I think, a really crafty deadline by Tim Connolly at the bare minimum. They get financial flexibility. They get somebody they needed, and Ayo Dosunmu, that archetype. And we'll see what they do after that. Maybe Minnesota has Mike Conley up their sleeve again, which I would be kind of torn by because Chris Finch probably plays him 30 minutes in the conference finals again. I don't know. But I think that flexibility Minnesota gain is a big deal. So let's see the comments. Scarborough goes, good move. Does he start or come off the bench? That's a great question. If I had to guess, I don't think they shake up the starting lineup. The starting lineup for Minnesota is really good right now. So I don't think they're going to make that move. This team so desperately needs bench scoring and general bench production outside of Naz Reid. So I'm kind of assuming Naz and Ayo Dosunmu both get 27, 28 minutes a night. And then the eighth and ninth man get a drop in production. I wouldn't be shocked if Jalen Clark loses some minutes. Part of me wants to see if J can still get in the rotation the second half of the year. So that's something I'm looking for, but I'm not entirely sure what's going to go on there. This is definitely, I think, going to be a top-heavy rotation. I'm guessing it's going to be 7 guys getting over 25 a night. So we'll see how that works. I do think that's a better infrastructure than what Minnesota had pre-deadline because literally there was one productive bench player on the Timberwolves outside of Naz Reid on the bench. Literally just one. Wait, I worded that weird. Naz Reid was the only productive bench player. This team is bottom 10 in bench scoring. This team, honestly, the moment the starters get off the bench, you just hope the bench doesn't fall too far behind for the starters to build up. So I expect Dante to still start and Ayo Dosunmu get a ton of minutes. MN Fish 1234. Ayo is a great pickup, good facilitator, good ISO score, and can hit threes. Exactly. This is like the perfect connective piece off the bench. Connective piece because he could do a little bit of everything. If you need him to score on ball, he can. Kind of like Terrence Shannon in college at Illinois, he was a fantastic creator. I had a lottery grade on him in 2021 when I was a draft writer for League Alerts. So during that time, I was super high on Ayo Dosunmu, and he's become a really good connective piece in the NBA. I'm really excited to see what he does. What do you think it'll cost to re-sign Ayo? That's a great question. It would not shock me if it's in the similar price range of what Nickeil Alexander-Walker signed for, kind of that MLE $17 million a year range. Pure speculation. I just think that's a fair evaluation on where he was. And not to piss everybody off on the chat, but if Minnesota got off of Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham last year, they probably are able to keep Nickeil and extend everybody that they did, including Naz, Randall, Rudy. So think of Ayo Dosunmu as kind of the correction for losing Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So that's how I would think about him. What about Bones? Hey, my fault. I totally forgot him in the moment. I'm sure he's going to play as well. He was great yesterday against the Toronto Raptors. So we'll stay tuned and see what happens there. But I am super excited to see how these guards kind of build up because now your bench, it's Ayo Dosunmu, Bones Highland, Dante, and Ant. Now the guard rotation doesn't look like a weakness anymore. So that's a big difference it makes. Okay, youth. In Asia 007, I could see Ayo being the backup for Dante and Bones still getting minutes. I think that is a great read. I think that's probably what's going to happen. I still think it's probably going to be Naz Reid gets 25 minutes off the bench. I bet, or 28 to 30. I bet Ayo gets 25 to 30. And then you start, like, I can't do the math in my head right now. I believe there's, 240 minutes off between all players that you have to round out. So if Ant's getting 35 minutes a night, if Dante's getting 28, if Randall, Rudy, Jaden all get 30 minutes a game on average, right? You're probably rounding out to 160 minutes between those guys. And then there's another 90 minutes that you need to figure out the bench. I bet Naz gets another, 30 of that. And then maybe Ayo gets 25. So then there's still like another 20 or so minutes to go around. So maybe it's like Rob gets 15 and then Ayo Dosunmu, or not Ayo Dosunmu, the ninth man, whether it's Jalen Clark, whether it's Julian J, they get the other 10 to 15, maybe depending on the matchup. It'll be very interesting to see how Chris Finch reacts to that and what he does. Terrence Shannon Jr. So next comment. SIAO Foo 83 and Terrence Shannon Jr. What's his role going forward? That's a great question. I would say, I don't know. I don't know because I think with Terrence Shannon, the question is, how much of his struggles this year are injury related and how much are they he's not developing at the rate Minnesota thought he would? I don't know the answer to that question, frankly. I just know this. When you're an athletic, physical player like Terrence Shannon Jr., and then you get a foot injury, that's going to affect your play significantly. So I personally lean on the side of Terrence Shannon Jr. is probably struggling this year because he's battling injuries as an athletically reliant player, especially offensively. I hope that that is the case. And then Terrence Shannon ends up being the player we expected him to be this year. Because that's been, honestly, in my opinion, a bigger disappointment than Rob. Not directly at Terrence Shannon because it might not be his fault. I was just hoping this would be the year where Terrence Shannon could give you 10 a game off the bench and the depth is a strength rather than a weakness because the bench has been a weakness for Minnesota. And that's with Naz Reid being a defensive player of the year. So we'll see there. I'm not sure, but hopefully his role is he's healthier and he could be consistently in the rotation. Jalen Clark, I think he was a great pick at 52 or wherever he was taken, but when you're contending, he's shooting below 30% from three this year. The offense isn't there. It would be ideal if you could replace those Jalen Clark minutes with Terrence Shannon minutes, especially if the expectation is Ayo can also fill in the gaps defensively that Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham couldn't. D. Chris 1367. Congrats on getting Ayo. Bulls fan. Also, it's pronounced Ayo. Oh, sorry. Appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for hopping on the live, by the way, for Wilder Wolves. I hope that Rob Dillingham works out for you guys because he's a likable dude. Like, by all indications, he seemed like a nice, hardworking guy on the Timberwolves. I have a friend, Andrew Dukowitz, who covers the Timberwolves kind of in person, and he was always telling me, like, Rob's a solid dude. So hopefully he works out for you guys because I do believe if Rob Dillingham's jumper gets back online, if Rob Dillingham's assertiveness gets back on track, I think Rob Dillingham is a real piece on this team. So my apologies. My notifications are going crazy. So I'm putting my phone on do not disturb. But back to that point, I hope Rob Dillingham works out for you guys. Leonard Miller, also for you guys. I think he's a super high upside talent. And I don't know if this was he just wasn't detail oriented enough to fit a role in the NBA. I think that's possible. But Minnesota is very strict with young players who gets in the rotation, who doesn't. So maybe Chicago's his opportunity to showcase the talent that I thought he had in the 2023 NBA draft. I had a lottery grade on Leonard Miller pre-draft. I am probably wrong on that, and maybe I haven't let that go. But I was a big Leonard Miller guy. I was like, this dude has some Lamar Odom in his game, and it just hasn't worked out in Minnesota the way I hoped it would. I was thrilled when they drafted Leonard Miller, 33rd overall. So that was disappointing. Alex Rush, Wolves raised their floor. Absolutely. Now the expectation between Naz Reid and Ayo Dosunmu playing, they go from the 22nd ranked bench to hopefully the 12th ranked bench. I think acquiring Ayo and replacing Mike Conley's minutes, somebody who was averaging 4 points a game on below 30% from the field, you replace that with Ayo Dosunmu minutes, averaging 15 points on 64 true shooting, very comparable to Jaden McDaniels' production. That makes a big difference off the bench, especially if Ayo Dosunmu can maintain that shooting efficiency that he was in Chicago. If he could do that in Minnesota, then holy crap, then we're talking about two really high impact pieces. And I also want to add Ayo Dosunmu, 26 years old, so he fits the Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid timeline. So barring anything crazy like a Giannis trade, which would be like the 0.1 percentile outcome of crazy, if they can get this production from Ayo Dosunmu and add this to this rotation, bare minimum, you just added another core piece potentially in Minnesota. I really like Ayo Dosunmu. I thought it was a great value move. What's the word for the rest of the day? More moves in the next few hours? That's a great question. I wish I knew. So when I look at the Timberwolves right now, you trade 4 second-round picks, right? You trade for Ayo Dosunmu. Now, losing 4 second-round picks as a team that's not very pick-heavy right now, that's a question. However, they didn't trade Rudy Gobert. They didn't trade Jaden McDaniels. They didn't trade Julius Randle, Naz Reid. So theoretically, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, this is like extreme scenario by a lot of indications. The Bucks are going to keep Giannis, but in some crazy world, if that is still feasible, I'm not sure if this deal directly gets in the way of a wild outcome like acquiring Giannis. I'm not saying they're acquiring Giannis. This could easily just be Minnesota. They realized, you know what? Giannis Antetokounmpo is not going to be a Timberwolf this deadline. So let's just make a move so we upgrade, because I'm sure a lot of us have been kind of pissed off if the pitch this deadline was Tim Connolly. There's Giannis rumors, there's Ja rumors, there's Kyrie rumors maybe, and then you end up saving money and trading Mike Conley for nothing. That would have been a big disappointment. So getting Ayo Dosunmu, I think that balances out where it's like, okay, they did something really good. The team got better this deadline, but you also maintain flexibility for this summer because they also have a first round pick to trade this summer, and they have all your core players. So I'm not saying they're trading for Giannis. I'm not. It's very likely not happening, but I'm not 100% sure this deal means they're just moving on from Giannis. I'm not sure if this was an alternative deal or they could have made both. I don't know. I legit don't know. I'm not saying they're trading for Giannis, by the way, but I think that is worth kind of contextualizing. And to a smaller scale, because you didn't trade any core players, if they wanted to acquire a high salary player, I'm sure that's still possible. Now, the question is, you trade 4 second round picks for Ayo Dosunmu. If you wanted to trade, let's just say, extreme case scenario, let's say they wanted to trade Julius Randle in something and get a player worth $30-something million. Maybe they would have to attach second round picks depending on the player they're acquiring, but I don't know. I could very see this being Minnesota's move. Okay, we swung for the fences on Giannis. It didn't work. We'll see if they do that this summer or not. The beauty of this is that Minnesota can now kind of see how this team works out this year and then decide, okay, do we need to make a big shakeup this summer? That flexibility and time is now there. And if they made a big trade today, there's going to be a lot of what ifs then, right? So I think there's more optionality now. They get Ayo, they get better, and now let's see, can they still make it out of the West? Because it's Ayo Dosunmu. Sorry, man. Sorry. Ayo Dosunmu, guys. It's a habit. It's a really bad habit. I'll cut it off by the time he's officially acquired in Minnesota. Ayo Dosunmu, appreciate you, man, for commenting my name. Sorry, guys. But yeah, so did Shams report that Giannis is staying in Milwaukee? Let's see. Okay, let's look at what Shams is saying right now. Okay. Over the last week, the Bucks have been focused on incoming calls. Milwaukee remains in talks to complete potentially one of the latter at the end of the deadline. So the Bucks agreed to trade Cole Anthony and Coffey to the Suns for Nick Richards and Hayes Davis. So the Bucks have been focused on incoming calls for Giannis and canvassing the league for small salary. Okay, so that's not a very direct official proclamation unless I'm completely Oh, wait, I see the report now. The Bucks have indicated to teams that they are keeping Giannis through the trade deadline. You know what Shams got to work on, man? I like Shams a lot, but I think with Woj, I want to hear what you guys think about Woj. So with Woj, my thing with the Woj is that he was able to just give you a rumor and just say, let's wait on this, and then he'll notify you again when something happens. With Shams, what frustrates me with Shams, it's like he'll repeat the same rumor that almost seems low attention span, clickbaity sometimes, and then he'll tell you it doesn't happen. I mean, remember last summer, it was after the Kyrie extension. He was like, don't sleep, guys, and something else is coming, and nothing happened. So that kind of frustrates me with Shams. I like having, a new generation reporter who's really good. That part frustrates me because you can kind of see the new generation reporting where it's a lot of like reporting noise and more noise, and then nothing happens. And that's what the Giannis situation felt like. Now, credit to him, he never said they were dealing Giannis, but there was a lot of steam on that. So I makes a lot of sense for the Bucks to hold on to Giannis if there's not a deal to be made, because what if the Thunder flame out? Maybe Chet's available. What if the Rockets flame out? Maybe Şengün or Ahmed Thompson's available, right? More teams have more picks to trade in the summer. So if there's more options for them with Giannis. So we'll see what happens. But maybe Giannis has more leverage, where he's on a final year of his deal, assuming he doesn't take the player option that he has in 2027. And then he can kind of indicate where he's going after that. So if you're Minnesota and you're still on the pipe dream of getting Giannis, then that would be how I would that would be the only way I can see him end up in Minnesota, if you directly say, trade me to Minnesota. But I'm happy that we get to see more Jaden McDaniels. Happy we get to see more Naz Reid. You know what? Shaking up a roster for that would have been tough. It would have been cool getting Giannis, but it would have been tough too, you know? So, all right, back to Timberwolves basketball. Ayo Dosunmu, guys. If I keep saying his name wrong in the comments, make sure to come at me, because I keep saying Ayo. So, Ayo Dosunmu, appreciate you guys for correcting me there. What are the next moves for the Wolves? So, what I would look at right now, probably the buyout market. That's what I'm guessing right now. Unless they make another deal in the near future, they still have 13 players on the roster because it was a 2-for-2, and they need 14 players. They need 14 players. They can go 13 players for about 2 weeks, I believe, but they would need to go for, a two for or one or two more players to add to the roster. So maybe, like I said early in the show, I'm watching Sacramento. Which players do they buy out? I saw a rumor that they might buy out DeMar DeRozan. And if they buy out DeMar DeRozan, I would love if Minnesota took a look. If the Dallas Mavericks buy out Chris Middleton, I would take a look there. Just add some more wing creation off the bench, because I don't think we know what to expect from Terrence Shannon right now. So that's what I would expect, that Minnesota makes a signing. And then there's the Mike Conley possibility again, which would be hilarious, because I think a lot of Wolves fans were like, I love Mike Conley, but his welcome is worn out now and he has to go because Chris Finch is playing him 30 minutes a night, or 18 minutes a night technically, but you know what I mean. So if they brought him back 2 days later, that would be hilarious. But we'll see what happens. I think they'll sign somebody. Do you think this team could beat a healthy Nuggets or Spurs? I think this is the exciting thing about Ayo Dosunmu, because the Western Conference is wide open. And before this deadline, I was leaning toward the belief that if they stay quiet, they're not winning a championship because they don't have enough depth. And I think this team was too top heavy for the first half of the year, and they didn't have the bench versatility to get a guard or somebody of that nature. So I would definitely say, I think this puts them in the conversation with the Nuggets and Spurs. We've seen them beat the Nuggets before, guys. I mean, we've seen them do it before. Minnesota physically matches up well because of the physicality, because even though Peyton Watson's taken a big leap this year, they don't have a matchup for Anthony Edwards. And we've seen that consistently year in and year out. So let's stay tuned for that, see what happens in that circumstance. Now, Jalen Clark will probably play more small forward. Before we get into that, also the Spurs, I think the Spurs are really young right now. I don't trust their guard play. I don't trust the spacing quite yet in San Antonio. I think they need experience. So honestly, even before this trade, if the Wolves play the Spurs, I'd probably pick Minnesota to win the series. And now I would definitely pick them to win the series, because Ayo is just going to add another big body with versatility in this rotation. So that'll be a big deal. Trade for Thanasis. If they get Giannis, probably getting Thanasis. That's for sure, man. I think you're right there. We're probably going to end up with Minnesota Mike back. I can see that. Next comment. So Goober said that. And then Tanita2594 says Ant wants Mike back. Yeah, he did. He said that in the post game. And he was like, okay, Mike, I hope you see this. I want you to come back. So we'll see, guys. We'll see if they get Mike back. Or maybe Charlotte. Also, they might just decide, you know what? Mike Conley's a great veteran presence. We have no reason not to keep him. So maybe Charlotte just hogs him for themselves. And if that happens, I'm okay with it. How fast do you think Ayo, guys, oh my gosh, Ayo Dosunmu, how fast do you think Ayo will see the floor? So Ayo Dosunmu, I think he plays right away. Once the deal is finalized, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen the Timberwolves account, or I'm in the PR email with the Timberwolves, so I'm not sure if it's official yet. But once it's official, I would assume we'll see him right away. Unless there's like an injury that I'm fully unaware of, but I don't believe that's the case. This is the move they needed without blowing the team up. I think that is fair. Very fair. Yeah, I think Ayo is going to make a big difference in Minnesota because, like you said, this is even if they got Giannis or something crazy, right? When you make a big trade for somebody, it takes time to gel. It does. We've seen that with acquiring Randall. We've seen that with acquiring Rudy Gobert. It always takes time to acquire a big player and figure it out. Now, Ayo is a plug and play player where right away he's in the Minnesota rotation and he's not really taken away from anybody. He's just going to kind of add to what was a very negative level of guard play. Like the guard play off the bench was so bad this year, even if he doesn't know what he's doing on the Timberwolves, which I don't foresee, but even if that's the case, it's still probably an addition straight up by being a significantly better player than Mike Conley. I think Ayo makes that level of difference. So euthanasia, my apologies. I know. I got to work on that, guys. I got to work on that. On the next episode of Wilder Wolves, we will definitely have that locked down. I've had that issue for years, and that's kind of pathetic thinking about it because I've been following Ayo Dosunmu since I used to be a draft writer for League Alerts. So when I was a writer at that time, I covered Ayo, and I had a lottery grade on him, and I still pronounce his name wrong. So pronunciation, work in progress, everybody. Appreciate you all for hopping on the live today. I'll be so happy if we get Mike back and maybe another depth piece at forward. I agree. And I would look at the buyout market for that. You know, Chris Middleton, DeMar DeRozan, top of my mind. If they can sign somebody like that, fantastic. Bench, Nas, Bones, Ayo, and Yuan Beringer. Yep. I think that would be ideal. Unfortunately for Jalen Clark, I think the shooting has become such a negative that it's hard to play him, even despite how much of a savant he is as a defender, as a thief stealing the ball the way he does. I do think that Beringer, with his size in a lot of matchups and his motor, his feel, I think Beringer should be the ninth man on this team. And that should be the four-man rotation off the bench. And honestly, those four, you got Naz Reid, best bench player in the league. You got Bones Hyland, capable of dominating any night. We saw that against the Raptors. Ayo Dosunmu, who can play basketball at a very high level, and Yuan Beringer, who is my favorite young prospect on the team. So I think there is a good possibility that that bench is going to move up to a top 12-ish bench in the league at minimum. Truth Explorer 5600 here places Na. Exactly. Not exactly a direct comp for Na because I think Na had better length, better defensive ability than Ayo does. But Ayo provides size, he provides strength, he's a good defender. But I think the offense is going to be an upgrade relative to what Nickeil brought Minnesota. It's kind of funny because Nickeil has taken such a big offensive leap in Atlanta. But I do think Ayo is a better and more consistent shooter this year. We'll see if that maintains because he's kind of been an up and down shooter for the last few years. But I think Ayo Dosunmu, he's going to add more offense. I think also financially, right? I made a connection the other month. Like, if they just traded Mike and Rob last summer, they probably could afford Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which stinks looking back. But now Rob Dillingham's gone. Mike Conley's gone. And they bring in Ayo Dosunmu. And now this summer, I foresee Minnesota trying to extend him, and they have the bird rights, so they're fully capable. Euthanasia 007, all good idea too. Yeah, man, we're going to struggle together. We're going to get there, and then eventually we're going to figure this all out. Bulls fans consider Ayo a six-man of the year candidate. I mean, he started 10 games, played 45. The efficiency was fantastic. So I think that Ayo Dosunmu is going to be a great fit. I really do. And I think Minnesota, I was saying they had a bottom 10 bench. Now they have two top 10 bench players in the league. Sorry, guys. I got a cold right now. So, like, my throat's, like, going crazy right now. So when TJ comes back, feels like he has been gone for like 3 months. I don't hopefully soon, man. He's been out for a long time. When he's back, I just hope he's fully healthy. That's thing number 1 because somebody that athletically reliant, he needs to be fully healthy. I think his struggles this year are as much he's been hurt as it is he's not progressing at the rate that we thought. So we'll see what's happening with TJ. Sorry, guys, give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. I think I may have like COVID or something. I'm kind of worried right now. But when will TJ come back? Yeah, like I said, I think Terrence Shannon, we'll see what happens, but it's health. It's all health with him. And then if he can be healthy, I think we'll know way more answers with Terrence Shannon on what he can provide the Minnesota Timberwolves. If he comes back and he plays well, I think that answers all of our questions that, hey, this guy was just hurt. That's it. And that would be a great outcome because I think Minnesota letting Nickeil Alexander-Walker go as well, I think they're banking a lot on Terrence Shannon, taking a big leap, which is why they're comfortable with it. Same with Rob Dillingham, and neither of them have done that this year, which is why the Ayo Dosunmu trade has been necessary. Now, if it's just injuries and you get Terrence Shannon and he's capable of being a 10-point per game guy off the bench, then we're talking about, okay, cool. Now Minnesota's bench, we're really cooking, and it goes from one of the worst benches in the league to, I remember Chris Finch saying last year when we made the Randall and Dante trade, we have 8 guys off the bench, or we have 8 total starters. So I think that if Shannon is able to provide that level of impact, then I think that makes a huge, huge difference for this Minnesota team. And I am addressing the next question now. Alex Rush, what is his injury? And also, Gaber Goober, when Terrence Shannon comes back, do we think this trade will negatively affect his minutes significantly? So Shannon, the official injury is left foot abductor strain. I don't know what the last word before strain is. I did not go to medical school. I'm a journalism student from college, so I don't know what the medical. When I was 4 years old, guys, and I saw blood, I almost threw up. So I knew I wasn't going to get into medicine, and I don't know what that specific muscle is that he hurt. So let's just say it's a left foot strain. So that's the official injury, and he's been out for a long time now. So we'll see if he can come back healthy and make that difference. I do think, answering Gaber Goober's question, I think Terrence Shannon Jr.'s injury, it probably does affect his minutes because we kind of broke it down. I think the 7 top guys are probably going to get around 200 to 210 minutes combined. And then there's only probably 30 to go around for 8 and 9. And that's optimistic. It's probably around 220 minutes between the top 7 guys, Dante, Ant, Jaden, Randall, Rudy, Naz, and Ayo. So now we're talking about 20 to 30 going between Bones Highland, Jalen Clark, Yohan Beringer, Terrence Shannon. I don't know what those minutes are going to look like, but at the minimum this year, my expectation for Shannon is that he eases back. They don't need him anymore necessarily the way they needed him when they traded Nickeil. But now we can just see how he comes back. If he is back healthy and thriving, then we can start talking about, okay, how can we start loading his minutes up? That's why the Ayo trade's great too, because it puts less pressure on Shannon to have to play injured the way he did early in the season. So when he does come back, hopefully the transition is smooth and it's productive. Will Finch even play Ayo? What's his history of playing guy who are traded midseason? So there's a couple guys we have to think about midseason. So the last major midseason trade was the D'Angelo Russell deal that brought back Nickeil Alexander-Walker, miss him, and Mike Conley, also miss him, even though things fell apart at the end with his play. However, we saw both play right away. And Nickeil, he exceeded expectations that season. Mike Conley was playing starter minutes. I don't think Finch is going to bench a new player that Minnesota clearly invested a lot in. I think Finch's style, because I always call Chris Finch a European coach at heart. He coached 13 years in Europe. In European coaches, guys, like in the EuroLeague, it's very veteran heavy. it's very utility based. If you're not the star player, you're playing a role. And I think that applies to a guy like Jaden McDaniels because we're always wondering why he doesn't get as much shots as he does. But also, those type of players in Europe, they never play off the bench. They almost never play when they're that young. Even Luka Doncic, because when Luka Doncic was an MVP in Europe, Facundo Campazzo was the starting point guard. Luka was starting because Campazzo, or was it? Yeah, it was Campazzo. He tore his ACL. So then Luka Doncic got the opportunity because he was hurt. And we all know that Luka Doncic is better than Facundo Campazzo. So that is just European basketball culture. And I think Finch kind of brings that to the NBA where young players are just not going to play. So I think his limitation on minutes is more toward young players than an established player like Ayo Dosunmu. So we'll see what exactly the rotation looks like. I know there are some questions in the comments of whether he's going to start or not, but I guess we'll wait and see there. I think my expectation is that Ayo Dosunmu comes off the bench and then we'll get rolling there. And if they are able to eventually make Ayo a starter, I think that would be a bonus because as much as I love Dante, I still kind of think he's a third guard on a championship team. So if Ayo Dosunmu can build into that role eventually in the next year or two, assuming they bring back Ayo Dosunmu, I think that would be a big benefit for this Minnesota Timberwolves team. What other questions do you guys have? Because we're going to end the live pretty soon. I think this Ayo Dosunmu trade, it's a really good one for Minnesota, regardless if they make a move or not the rest of the day. And if they do make a significant move, I will go back live on Wilder Wolves podcast. So definitely stay tuned for that. But I'm expecting this is the big move, which is fine. Like Minnesota, their mindset is shoot for the stars to get a guy like Ayo Dosunmu. And then if they, or not, shoot for the stars for Ayo Dosunmu, shoot for the stars for Giannis Antetokounmpo. And if it doesn't work, make a good, small, in the margins move. And I think this is what it was. Keru9982 says, y'all got a good one with Ayo. I appreciate it, man. I hope so. I really hope so. I'm really excited to see what he does in Minnesota. I could tell Chicago fans love him. I know he's from the Chicago area, so it's kind of cool that he was able to end up in Chicago and play his rookie term of his career in that area. That was pretty fantastic. Signed a second contract in Chicago. That's pretty great that he was able to start his career there. And even with this trade today, he's still in the Midwest, so he's not too far from home. As a Minnesota fan, should we be happy? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that Ayo, it's a margin move in a way because Minnesota, while getting somebody who's a significant upgrade off the bench, I believe they're not a luxury tax team right now. I could be wrong. I think they're below the first apron right now. So that makes a big difference financially. And they still upgrade their team. So if you're not going to go shoot for the stars and get a guy like Giannis, I think that is a big win. I personally didn't foresee that they're able to get, this financially flexible before the deadline the way they did. But shout out to Tim Connolly on upgrading the team and also just probably making the owners happy by saving $20 million or whatever it was. Tim didn't want to give up J-Mac. Glad he didn't. Is that an official report? I haven't seen anything on that. Can somebody confirm? Was that a report that Minnesota was hesitant on dealing J-Mac in a Giannis deal? Because I know the Bucks, they wanted Giannis. And I think if you want to trade for Giannis, unfortunately, Jaden McDaniels is a requirement, right? So, yeah, I don't know. If that's true, Tim didn't want to give up J-Mac. That would be interesting. I would be upset regardless of who they acquired by trading Jaden McDaniels because obviously he's homegrown and I still believe he has all-star potential, especially with how much he's progressed this year. So I think we'll wait and see what happens, this summer because now this team, they have time, they have flexibility to see what this core can do in the Western Conference this year. If I'm Minnesota, I'm thinking this move keeps us in the conversation to get out of the West because I think the West is wide open this year. I don't think the Spurs have the experience. Minnesota matches well with Denver. Oklahoma City, I think we're seeing some cracks because of J-Dub's injury with their shooting struggles. Now, maybe that's where Jared McCain comes in for Oklahoma City, because Oklahoma City gets a really good shooter in that young guy. So, I think Minnesota, they should view themselves as a team with a shot to get out of the Western Conference with this move. If they don't make any move this deadline outside of dump Mike Conley and trade back in the first round, that would be a big frustrating point. And I would totally ride the wave of what the hell happened. But they made the move. They still got an Ayo Dosunmu. I think the team got better. They got more flexible. I think they're in the conversation. So that's pretty good. I think a pretty good outcome for Minnesota at the bare minimum. Gaber Goober goes J-Mac, Ayo, Nas, and Ant all under 27. Plus, we got Burringer, Shannon, Clark, and maybe Zakarski. Wolves do got a bright future, my man. Absolutely. That's a big part of the Ayo deal. Now they have his bird rights. I think we should view him as a long-term piece on this team, at least at this point of the Timberwolves stage. So if they can keep these guys together, I think Ayo is a big addition to this young core, because it was becoming clear Rob Dillingham is not the guy that Minnesota hoped he would be on this team for whatever reason. For if it's Minnesota's fault, Rob, a mix, I don't know. But I think the reality was Rob Dillingham wasn't working in Minnesota, and now they make a deal that kind of recovers from that by getting a young, productive player from a weird situation in Chicago, where I think Chicago's still trying to figure out what direction they're taking. They have a lot of guards they've traded for this deadline, and now they've shipped Kobe, they've shipped Ayo. They still have Trey Jones on their team. They got Josh Giddey. They got Anthony Simons. I'm not entirely sure they got Rob Dillingham now. Like, I'm not sure what's going on, but Minnesota, they saw a window and they took advantage of it. And I think helping facilitate that deal they made with the Pistons with Chicago might have helped their chances in that deal as well. Or maybe this was like pre-agreed upon, where Minnesota was like, hey, we won't take anything from you now because we want to maintain leverage for Giannis. Now, if the Giannis thing doesn't work, let's revisit this, and then we'll send you Rob, and then we'll get Ayo back. I know there are reports saying that Minnesota had the opportunity to get Kobe White, and they rejected it, and people are like, what is going on? But I think this is the reason. They wanted Ayo, not Kobe White. And Kobe White was a more expensive player. Kobe White would have wanted more money. I'm purely speculating. Probably more expensive than Ayo in the summer. And you can argue Ayo is a better fit. So all of those advantages for Minnesota, I think it's very, very exciting to see what happens. That's the only way the Bucks would trade him. I bet Tim was trying to get a Randall Nas Rob trade. I'm sure that's what he was trying to get. I agree. I wonder what the reports will be, if there will be any, in regard to how Minnesota viewed the trade, because it sounds like in the distance, Minnesota was more than willing to trade anybody. The Bucks, they kept firm. You get Giannis, we get McDaniels. If that's true, and that was the holdup, that would be interesting. Even though I love that we kept Jaden, and I would say he's the second most valuable asset on the Minnesota Timberwolves. This team has too many. All right. I was just seeing how Bulls fans wanted to keep Ayo instead of Kobe White. Now they both gone. Yeah, man. I don't know how Chicago fans view at this deadline. I don't know. I think they got flexibility. I think Anthony Simons' contract's expiring, and then, they get a young prospect in Rob, and they get I don't know what's going on. I'll say this for Chicago. I love Montes Buzelis. I think that dude has real star potential. I wish Minnesota drafted Buzelis instead of Rob Dillingham by trading up, because I think if we got Buzelis, we would talk about Buzelis the way we talk about Jaden. And the only thing better than one Jaden McDaniels is two Jaden McDaniels. And I think Montes Buzelis has a very similar archetype potential as a Jaden McDaniels. So Chicago, you guys got a good one in Montes Buzelis. Bright future. Forrest Phillips. I am Julian Phillips' cousins. We just got traded to y'all. Hey, man. Well, you should be a part of this community. We are so glad to help you. Welcome to the Timberwolves community. This is Wilder Wolves podcast. And if anybody's new, this is a fan Timberwolves community where we get journalists on the show, we get fans on the show. This is a fan community. So definitely be a part of this, man. We're super glad to have you. Congratulations on being part of the team. And we hope Phillips can do some good things. He is a super high level athlete. And I think he's got really good tools. If Minnesota can get the most out of that, that'd be a big advantage because he definitely has NBA level tools. So we'll see what happens with how the rotation goes for Minnesota. But Forrest Phillips, welcome to the Timberwolves community. Wilder Wolves is where, the fan base can run wild as we continue to grow. Thank you all so much for the growth on Wilder Wolves. This show came out last June. For those who are new, I graduated studying sports broadcasting at Arizona State, and I decided I wanted to build this as my dream. And you guys have been so supportive, so appreciative for all of the love you guys have given this platform. We've now surpassed over 2.1K followers on YouTube on this. So thank you all so much for this. And I'm excited to continue growing with you guys and having this be, a true Timberwolves fan community. So thank you all so much. Bulls have 12 cards. Holy crap. Is that an exaggeration? Is that a hyperbole, or is that true? Because if it's a hyperbole, that would make more sense. But if they have 12 guards, holy crap. You think the Wolves make more moves? I think they will be involved in the trade deadline. I foresee them signing a couple more players because they have to. They have 13 players on the team. They need to get to 14. They only have, I believe, 2 weeks in which they can have 13 players on the roster. So they will have to sign somebody. Will this trade make Ant more an off-ball player? I think Ant's usage will stay the same, personally. I do think Ayo gives Ant some comfortability and some versatility. So that is, I think, something to look out for. Just having more high-level creators. I would say, I think the Nikhil connection is very valid because Ayo Dosunmu, I wouldn't label a true point guard, but kind of a connective combo guard like Nikhil was. So I think there will be some similarities between how Nikhil's used and Ayo's used, especially next to Anthony Edwards. Arizona State, my god brother went there. That's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, ASU is a fun time. It's a great school. They have a great broadcasting program. I love and appreciate all the development they provide you. George Gervin is your godfather? Dude, that's awesome. That's sick. That's awesome. George Gervin is my uncle still talks about George Gervin. He was Showtime. Any tips on how to get my first girlfriend? This is a Timberwolves fan show, so I would say, you know what? It's a numbers game, so just keep approaching, stay present. Girls like it when you listen and be yourself, and if you do that, I'm sure you'll do great finding a girlfriend. I'm really happy we kept Terrence Shannon. When he coming back, I'm not sure. Hopefully soon. This foot injury has lingered a long time, so hopefully soon. And as I've said throughout the show, if he's healthy, I think we'll get a more definitive answer on what Terrence Shannon can provide Minnesota. So assuming that Minnesota can get Terrence Shannon healthy, that would make life a lot easier because the expectation in Minnesota was pretty significant. So, yeah, if he's healthy, I think we'll know a lot more. Okay, that question was weird. Yeah, you know what, man? I appreciate all the questions. So, yeah, I'm definitely not a dating coach. I'll say that. But, I appreciate all the engagement that has happened on the show today and throughout the last couple months. And, yeah, guys, so Ayo Dosunmu and Julian Phillips are Minnesota Timberwolves. And it's going to be very exciting and intriguing to see what happens. To all of those who are new and looking for just Timberwolves updates, Timberwolves status, welcome to the Wilder Wolves podcast. It's a fan community. We are going to continue following the team during the mountain peaks and the valleys of the season. This team had a 5-game losing streak, 4-game winning streak. It's kind of the nature of Timberwolves basketball, but we provide coverage throughout the entire period. And also for all you guys on the show, we have every Friday something called Wolves Fandom Friday. So we get Timberwolves fans on the show as often as we possibly can on Fridays. All you have to do to be on the show is DM me wilder@wilderadams.com or email me wilder@wilderadams.com, or you could DM me what's on tap NBA. So if you guys do that and reach out and say you want to be on the show, we will get something scheduled, because this is what I take pride in with this community, with this podcast, that we involve the fans. We interact with fans of the Timberwolves. We get fans on the show, and we provide a big diversity of opinions, perspectives, whether it's a fan, whether it's journalists. One day, if we get players, we had Jiggly Boy on the show the other month. So we try to get as many cool voices on the show as possible. And the fans are responsible for this platform to being where it is and where it's going. So thank you all so much for the love. Thank you all so much for being on the show. I appreciate you guys to a massive extent. I'll answer all the questions that are remaining as well. So thank you all so much. Do you think that Mike will be cut by the Hornets? I think it's possible. I think if Mike is cut by the Hornets, I can foresee Minnesota re-signing him. I mean, Anthony Edwards was on the show or on the post game saying that he wants Mike back. So what Anthony Edwards wants, Anthony Edwards gets. Who are the buyout candidates? The first two that came to mind were Chris Middleton and DeMar DeRozan to get some scoring punch off the bench. If those guys get bought out, I'm not sure if they're getting bought out, but there was buzz about the Sacramento Kings buying out DeMar DeRozan. There's also some speculation maybe the Mavericks do the same with Chris Middleton so we can go to a contender. I would label Minnesota as a contender. I hate when people say what we gave up for Dilly. We gave up an 8th grade. Okay. So Rob Dillingham was definitely disappointing in Minnesota. That's absolutely. And I think the physical tools are a big question with Rob Dillingham, especially if the guy can't shoot, because this year the dude could not shoot the basketball. So Rob Dillingham definitely was not going to work here. And I think getting him for Ayo, like you're saying, is a big one. It's a big one. So shout out to Tim Connolly for getting Ayo Dosunmu and not Rob Dillingham on the team anymore, just because he didn't fit. I hope it works out for Rob. He's now in a guard-heavy rotation in Chicago. As of right now, we'll see if there's any more deals before the deadline. But we'll just see what happens with Rob. I hope he gets his opportunity so that we know. But at the bare minimum, this is the right deal for Minnesota. Thank you so much for the love, man. Thank you guys for hopping on the live. Troy said you're crushing it. Wishing you success. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you, Troy. Thank you all for taking time out of your day to be on Wilder Wolves. I sincerely mean this. It means the world. So exciting. We had up to 130 listeners on the show at one time, which, if this was told to me 6 months ago, that would have been, a very awesome result that I would have taken every time. But most importantly, the fact that you guys take the time to listen to Wilder Wolves, that means the most to me. So thank you all so much for listening. Maybe we'll re-sign Mike if we need to sign someone. Yeah, I think that's a very realistic possibility. And I hope, to the last question, that Mike, if he's on the Timberwolves, it's in a Joe Ingles role, because I think we've seen since December below 30% from the field. I think as much as Mike is respected, as great of a career he's had, I do think that, it's run its course in terms of being a productive NBA player. So we'll see what happens. The rest of the deadline, if Minnesota makes another significant deal somehow, I'll hop right back on live and we'll talk about that. But if this is the move, really love the deal. Thank you all so much for listening to the Wilder Wolves. I appreciate you guys greatly. And for those who are new, make sure to subscribe and like this video. Thank you all so much. It's a Timberwolves trade deadline special. This is Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame mode fandom.